I'm going to show you a video of a person who completed a graduate program in theology and had learned some things during those studies that went completely against what he believed to be true from his Christian upbringing. And so I want you to pay attention to what he learned, because there's a lot of other people who graduate from these types of programs and they learn the same thing and they still go off to create ministries, to create churches, and to preach the word of the Lord, right? As if they haven't learned any of these things at all. So here we go.
So I've invested 3.5 years of my life, my youth, on a Master's of Arts in Theological Studies at Regent College here in Vancouver, Canada. You know, there are things you expect to learn, like Old Testament, New Testament, history, Greek 1, Hebrew, but there are other things you learn that just come out of nowhere and rock your world and change your life. First thing I learned, there's a beautiful, interesting, powerful, disconcerting, high level of uncertainty in scholarship, biblical scholarship, between theological thinkers from all sides. Right, left, front, right, up, down. And why do I mention this? Because one of the reasons I invested 3.5 years of my life in theological studies was that I always felt like there was something missing. So I just thought I needed, a graduate level theological school that would, finally answer. Because, scholars know they read in Greek, they read in Hebrew, doctorates left and right. I remember my first class was OT. And the prof was like, nobody knows who wrote Genesis or Exodus or Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy for the matter.
One of the first things he learned was that nobody knows who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. And so the church, they say that Moses wrote it, but the church, they base their knowledge primarily on belief. And you can't go into these academic settings talking about, we believe that Moses wrote the 5 books, therefore he's the one that wrote it, right? That approach to knowledge, that doesn't fly in that world, right? And so you have to produce facts, and you have to provide reason to support that case that you have. And the facts are that the 5 books of Moses were not written by Moses, but they were written by people who lived many centuries after the character Moses is depicted to have lived. And so one of the books that you can read about this is called Who Wrote the Bible by Dr. Richard Elliott Friedman. But this is also just common knowledge in the world of scholarship. So you don't even have to read that book to know that that this is what it is, right? You could just do a simple Wikipedia search for Mosaic authorship, and on the last paragraph in the first section, it says, Mosaic authorship of the Torah was unquestioned by both Jews and Christians until the European Enlightenment, when the systematic study of the 5 books led the majority of scholars to conclude that they are a product of multiple authors throughout many centuries. So these are not secrets hidden in the Vatican somewhere where no one can find them, right? These are the basic facts in the academic world, which is why he learned them in his master's program in theology. So let's get some more.
There's theories, there's sources, there's redactors. And I was like, that's weird. That's weird. And then we get to Joshua and Ruth and Judges and nobody knows who wrote them. Oh, wait, let me turn that light on. There you go. And then there's also this uncertainty in terms of translation, in terms of documents, in terms of history. All I'm saying is the uncertainty at the beginning is uncomfortable. It's just awkward. And professors, they start poking holes in your perfect rounded theology. Because my theology was, complete and good and correct. I just had some missing pieces, some theological Lego pieces missing. Here I just need, some patches aside. The rest was there. It's just like my theology was already mature, as a Christian leader. But professors start to, poke some holes. Did you know about this? What do you think about this way? And do you know that this isn't really true? And did you know that boo, boo, boo? And it comes a point when things start to shake so much and things start to fall apart, and you're like, what is happening?
His faith started to get a bit rocky when he was presented with these facts. And so this could happen all of a sudden when someone is faced with a reality that they never knew existed. And it could be a terrifying thing. This is what I tell a lot of people. And this is one of the reasons why people try to persuade others not to go to these biblical schools, because they fear that those people might lose their faith in the process.
Wisdom number 2, I was able to open up my eyes to my own bias. And you would be like, duh, yeah, we all have bias. I didn't really get how much of a bias I had. And you know, that's just the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, I have a bias, duh. But just opening my eyes that the biblical authors also had a bias because they were human.
Uh-oh, look what he realized in his graduate program. That the writers were humans. And not only were they humans, but they were humans with their own biases, just like all the other humans have, right? And so the churches, they'll make it seem like these people were from some other galaxy or something. But they were just humans, right? Doing very human things for the period that they lived in.
But just quickly, every biblical author had its own culture, its own way of seeing the world. And through those lenses, they saw what Jesus did, and they interpret what was happening to Jesus. And not only that, imagine their lenses just like cameras. They have to choose what to pay attention to. And not only that, for example, Luke says in Luke 1 that he went around and talked to the witnesses, to the eyewitnesses. The eyewitnesses also had their own bias, their own lenses, what they choose to see and not to see, what they guess was important or not important. And from all of those accounts, Luke had to pick which ones to write down. He didn't write down everything he heard. He also had to pick. So he also had to decide what was important and what wasn't important. There is the guidance of the Spirit, but there's also choices on what to include on his accounts about Jesus. There were many human decisions made by authors with biases, with their own lenses.
The whole Bible was made by human decisions with their own biases.
And that was fascinating to me to understand, because you also understand all of the profs that are teaching you in your masters, they all have biases as well. They all have lenses as well. Like your students, they have lenses. And that makes it better. That makes it great, because through their lenses, they see through this angle and through that angle. And they point their cameras at different places in scripture. That's kind of the magic of it all. The fact that we all have biases in different cultures and different contexts. We can see different things. We can ask different questions. But yeah, biases are a given, and not just a given, they're a gift.
That's going into everyone having their own personal interpretation of the scriptures and what it means to them when they read it. And so people, they come from different backgrounds, and these backgrounds have influences on the way that they interpret what it is that they read. Understand? Now from here, what I want to do is I want to go into some of these comments on the video on his channel so you can see how others responded to this information. So let's go into the first comment on this video, and this is what it says. First time here. Great content. I have 6 hours remaining to finish my Master's of Divinity. You are so right. There is a great sense of being uncomfortable in seminary. I am still wrestling with learning that Joshua didn't tear down the walls of Jericho, but it's all good. Thanks again. So this person here is about to finish his Master's of Divinity, and he is still wrestling with the fact that the biblical story of Joshua leading the Israelites into the land of Canaan never happened, and that there were no walls of Jericho that ever fell down. So he knows this. But watch what's getting ready to be revealed next. So the creator responds and says this. 6 hours? Congrats. What are your plans now? Are you looking to be a pastor at a particular denomination? And the gentleman replies this. I am currently serving as a pastor of a congregation where I have been for 29 years. My degree concentration is in chaplaincy. So he knows about this information, and he's still a pastor of a congregation. And guess who doesn't know about this information? The people hooting and hollering in the church, right? And this is why you have to understand that the clergy or the church leaders or the religious leaders, they've always been the people in possession of certain knowledge, right? They have been the educated class of people, and they've kept much of the knowledge amongst themselves. And they provide only what they feel that they need to give out to the people that they lead. And so a lot of people, they spend their entire lives believing that this stuff is true, right? While the clergymen, they have a different set of knowledge and a different set of interpretations behind the scenes. And so let's go ahead and see another comment. First time listener, hence, first time comment and question. I love your energy and your comments. I look forward to hearing more from you. Are you a pastor, a professor, or still in process? Thanks. So he's talking to the creator of the video. Now this is how he responds. Hey, Dennis. Nice to meet you. I graduated from my master's and I'm currently working as a pastor here in Vancouver. So the creator of this video, he's a pastor too. And he already explained to everyone the things that he learned in his program about the authors having biases and not knowing who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. So the question is, what keeps people like this still wanting to teach the word of the Lord when they know these things? Now, to be fair, I don't know these pastors in the comment section. I don't know their exact reason for doing so, but I have seen other pastors who use the power of interpretation to minimize the facts that show the Bible is just like any other human invention, right? And so they convince themselves that God works in mysterious ways, right? And they create these elaborate explanations as to why the biblical stories are unverifiable or inaccurate, right? And so they'll find whatever justification they can that allows them to still keep believing and still keep preaching and still be able to sleep at night, right? Now, are these people bad folks? Not necessarily, because they're doing what they believe to be right in their own mind, right? Just like anyone else is doing. And the thing that we have to remember is that religions like Christianity, they're based primarily on faith, not the facts. Meaning a person could present all the evidence that's available in the world on how many of these biblical stories never happened the way that they're explained in the Bible, and that wouldn't matter one bit to these believers, for the simple fact that they like and they enjoy the stories and they desire to believe them, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that if that's what they want to do. Now, we have to understand how it is that they think so we can get an understanding on why it is that they respond in the way that they do. Now, let's go to the last comment and check it out. Oh, wonder Christianity go array. I think he's saying no wonder why Christians go array. I think that's what he's saying. Seminary like this one teach their own interpretations of the Bible. They do not believe what the Bible said. What seminary is that, sir? So we can see right here that he's a bit aggravated. He doesn't like that the pastor's bringing out the fact that people have their own interpretation, because he knows what this implies if he accepts this as a reality. And so this is how the pastor responds with this. Hey, BMO, what do you mean their own interpretation of Scripture? Do you believe that there is the one way of interpreting Scripture? If so, which one is it? In what year did this interpretation come to be? Who finally cracked the code to the one and only correct interpretation? In which country did this one interpretation happen? I would love to hear your thoughts. It's called Regent College here in Vancouver. So this is a good and honest response, and it tells us that the pastor clearly understands that the Scripture is based on personal interpretation, right? And so at least he has enough self-awareness to understand that his interpretation of the Bible is based on his personal perception. And this is obvious to anyone who just takes one moment to look around and see all the different churches and all the different religious sects using the one same book, right? And so there's no mystery to this at all, but it is hidden in plain sight. Now, today, we're in the information age where we can see conversations like this taking place in the comment section amongst the clergymen or the religious leaders. And then what we can do is we can find out what they learn in their seminary schools, and we can compare it to what is being taught in church, right? And anyone with a phone or a computer that has internet, they're able to do this. And so this is a major privilege that many of us have today who live in certain parts of the world. Whereas less than 40 years ago, that was not the case, right? When you go back further in history into the 17th century, the 13th century, the 1st century, religious knowledge and understanding at high levels were contained in the possession of the priest, the sages, rabbis, gurus, and so forth, right? And they selectively filtered out what they wanted to provide to the public, right? And they still do this today, right? Many of the pastors who went to these seminary schools, they're not going to go out into the church and teach that Moses didn't write the first 5 books of the Bible, or that archaeological evidence is against many of the major, most important stories in the Bible, or that they don't have any of the original manuscripts, and the manuscripts that they do possess have errors in them and have later scribes who have tampered with them by either adding or taking out some of the verses, right? They're not going to go into the church and teach these things, and for various reasons that each of the pastors, the priest, or the preachers have for themselves, right? But the difference is the common person today, they have access to the same information, which means they can use that information to make a more informed judgment for themselves as to what religion really is and how this tool has been used and is still being used. And so we want to thank the pastor for sharing his experience, and hopefully some of you have learned something from this video. that could help you climb just one more rung on that ladder out of the pit to get into the free world where life is much better and it makes more sense. And so I want to thank you for watching all the way into the end. My name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you in the free world.